majority of meetings that people have in businesses are a waste of time. And a lot of companies are just not very good at managing performance and managing work. They don't manage on output, they manage on presence. There's a bit of a gap, and that gap is crossed with trust. If you don't trust your people, then that gap will feel infinitely large. And then what is the solution? Well, you will go to the office because I don't have to trust you because I see that your butt is in the seat.
That your people and culture team did 1,800 performance reviews in 48 hours.
Yeah.
Tell us how. What is the one thing from remote work you fight hardest to keep?
Welcome to the 7 People Podcast, your guide to creating irresistible organizations.
And this week, we invited a guest, Job van der Voort from Remote. Because in 2020, the world went remote overnight. And suddenly, we were all trying to build trust, collaboration, and connection through screens. But while some companies struggled, others thrived. Remote, the company that literally helps others work remotely, is one of them. In this episode, we're going to explore what it really takes to build a successful remote-first organization, how to align across time zones, create belonging without offices, and keep performance high when culture has to travel through Wi-Fi. Welcome, Job. Thank you for joining today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah. And as I just mentioned, many companies went remote in 2020 because they had to.
Yeah.
And you started Build Remote in 2019, it was, right?
Yeah, January 2019.
Yeah. But you started remote from the start. Like, what was kind of the mindset and philosophy when you started building this company?
Well, the company I worked for before GitLab was a fully remote and distributed company. So I knew it would work really, really well. And I didn't have any money. So it's very easy to not open an office if you don't have any money.
True.
You don't have to spend any money on it. So yeah, I knew that it would work. And I also knew that, if it doesn't work, then we can always open an office. But mostly because it costs money to do so.
And was there anything in the start that you did or challenges that you faced? Like, for example, if I would start a remote company tomorrow, that you're like, Flo, don't do that?
No, I think when you're a really small team, it's super easy.
Yeah.
Right? Especially if you're somewhat in the same time zone, which is likely when you start a company, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're somewhat close together. And so for us, we would come together quite regularly. We were all living in Portugal. First 4 of us, the first 9 or 10 of us even, we were all in Portugal. So we would come together maybe once a month or every 2 weeks or so, just have lunch. But, when you're a small team, it doesn't really matter. Like, you don't really have to do anything, like, because you're going to continuously be talking with each other anyway. And so it's very simple.
Then it's easy to keep the culture or whatever alive. But when you grew, how did you make sure that culture stayed?
Yeah, so at GitLab, we did this thing where we wrote a handbook about how to run the company. And so when we started remote, we did the same thing. So I started writing what were our values as a company with examples. Like, this is how we think you should behave. This is how we think you shouldn't behave. How we communicate with each other. And sort of like how we think about running the company as a whole. And that became sort of a scaffolding for the culture. I don't think culture is something you have to create or build. I think it's an emergent thing, right? It's an emergent property of the fact that many people are talking with each other. And so if you guide it by creating that scaffolding, by saying, well, these are our values, this is how we expect you to communicate with each other, this is how we do things in this organization, then what emerges is hopefully something in line with what you envisioned. But it's not something you can control, really. No. And I think it changes a lot. And the way I think about it is that every time your company doubles, it's a new company in people, right? Because then half or more than half of all the people are new. In other words, the majority of people, have not known how the company was before, and therefore that's irrelevant. And so there's no keeping of a culture. It's just, what is the culture today? And how can we guide it to a different place if we're not happy with it?
And is that also means keep updating that handbook that you wrote once? Or?
And it's a big challenge because you grow, and on one hand you want everybody to make edits to it and make changes to it, and at the same time, I think as a founder or just a leader in a company, you do want to guide it in a particular direction. But we always let everybody can edit it in theory, and then we changed it over time regularly. Still today, sometimes I get frustrated with something. I do a lot of things out of frustration. So I see people using too many abbreviations, so I angrily type the page, never use abbreviation because I don't know what they mean. So
Okay, clear. And what are like typical remote habits or ways of work that are maybe in the employee handbook?
There's a few big ones. I think the first one is we try to work asynchronously, right? So we avoid as much as possible to be doing the same thing at the same time in the same place, right? And like a meeting, like we are doing something very synchronous right now. But for a lot of work, you don't need to be doing the same work and looking at the same thing at the same time, right? If you're an engineer, most of your work is done by yourself. Same as with designers. So there's very occasional moments only where you have to get together. And what we try to do is reduce the times that you have to get together. Because my belief is that the majority of meetings that people have in businesses are a waste of time. Because they're, for example, sharing of information. Sharing of information is something where you don't need to be in the room, right? If I just want you to get a certain message, I can just send you a message instead of starting a meeting. So I think that's a really important one. Then there's like little details, like, for example, we try to avoid slideshows because I think it's a waste of time internally because people spend more time on the way it looks rather than on the content. And other than that, we try to be really flexible because culture is such an emergent property rather than something that you really create. I rather create like the guidelines and create a few things that are helpful towards creating that culture that I want, towards making sure that people bond, for example, rather than saying, oh, you must do this or we do this specific thing. So I try to not be too prescriptive about how you do things, which also works in an organization that grows a lot with many different departments, which have very many different people. And so it's best if those people form their own kind of cultures.
Yeah, fair enough. And I'm not sure if you read the book Digital Body Language.
No.
Okay, it's about how online communication styles can sometimes clash across generations, but also across cultures. And of course, when you're online, you sometimes miss out on the, I don't know.
It's like only 7% of communication is verbal, right?
Oh, yeah,
so
yeah.
I think you're talking about specifically more on a video call, if I understand
Yeah,
correctly.
for example, when you just send a message, not sending information. But for example, what the book says is that sometimes when you say, for example, sorry, dot.
Yeah.
For somebody that is in Generation Z, that can be like, whoa, okay, very passive aggressive. I didn't know you were mad. And for Generation
I also
X,
heard like the
like
smiley face is passive aggressive.
Yeah.
Like for me, I'm like,
Like a
smiley
simple
face.
smiley face.
Yeah. But apparently
yeah.
it's a younger generation that is passive aggressive as well.
Yeah, exactly. So do you kind of notice this in your organization, that there are sometimes like these miscommunications or whatsoever because you mainly use messaging, for example?
Yeah, we it's in our handbook. Everybody should assume positive intent. So when you read a message, somebody says sorry, assume that it just says sorry. Don't try to read into it.
Yeah.
One of our values is care, and we want to care about each other as well, not about the work. And that falls under that. And if you're going to be really harsh in over interpreting people's messages, it's going to be really difficult because for almost everybody in my company, English is a second or a third language, not the first one. And so people will communicate in different styles. There's also good solutions to it. So I sent a lot of videos of myself to my team. We use Loom, which is nice. And I encourage people to do the same thing, which is really effective. You just press record, you talk, and then you can put a face to the sorry. But
and even in Slack you can do that, right? You can just click record.
But I find it very annoying because the transcription is really bad. Because actually, I like to record looms, but I kind of hate to watch them.
Yeah.
So because it's very slow and I read fast, so I like to just be able to read the transcription.
Okay, so you've already read the transcripts before you've watched the video, is that right?
Yeah, usually. Yeah, I watch all videos in 2.5x, and if that's not fast enough, I click through it or I read the transcription.
2.5, it's like blah, 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 blah.
Yeah. There's like 2 people at Remote out of the 2,000 who speak too fast to be able to like watch it at 2.5x, and I always make jokes about it, but everybody else, it's easy. But yeah, I kind of feel like for us, you just have to be an adult.
Yeah.
Like if you're going to be very easily hurt because you're reading into a message that just said sorry or there was a smiley, like your life is going to be really difficult.
I know, yeah.
At our company, but also outside of our company. So I feel like that's on you, not on us. Yeah.
No.
I like what you said about the slideshows as well. And a CEO at a former company I used to work at, he said the same. He said, hey, I don't want to see any pretty slide decks. If I see a pretty slide deck, then like you wasted time making a pretty slide deck. Like a Word document's completely fine. Just with the bullet points, bang, bang, bang.
For external presentations, it makes total sense, right?
Of course.
But for internal presentations, I hate it. And actually, I think it's counterproductive because what is happening is that you take content from, we use Notion as like a central place where we have all documentation. So you take content out of Notion or it never enters Notion and instead it's on the slideshow that's very hard to index and very hard for people to contribute to, maintain, look up later, etc. So yeah, really dislike it. There's exceptions to the rule, but very few actually. I think in many cases you can just screen share a Notion document or you can screen share Figma if you're a designer or you can screen share, I don't know, Visual Studio Code if you're a programmer.
So one thing I wanted to talk about is I saw on talking about videos. I saw you on a video, on LinkedIn actually, and you were saying actually there's too many Slack channels, and you went through a process of reducing them. Is that right?
Yeah, we have one person, Stanley, who like organizes our Slack and our Notion and such, and he like prunes it and tries to keep it updated. But it's not a battle that we want to win. We don't expect to win. Actually, there's a new problem we have. And I realized like a few weeks ago, which is we have a lot of sensitive data and we have a lot of projects that are like sensitive. And so people start using code names. And so we have a lot of code name Slack channels. So it's like, for example, Project Phoenix, Project this. Then of course these things can leak very easily. And now we have so many Slack channels with code names. I don't know anymore what each one is. So I was looking for a particular thing, and I had to like go through like 15 Slack channels to figure out which one it was. But yeah, like it's not doable to actually maintain it really, really well. So the way we organize Slack is that we have a few basic channels that everybody is part of, and we have a particular structure. So the basic one is like important for important announcements. Only me and one or two other people can post on that. Then we have announcements for general announcement. Anybody can post there, but the idea is that you are sending something to the whole company. That is not critical because that's very important, but it is, I want to announce this to the whole company, and there's some value to it for everybody. And then teams have like a Slack channel called Team Dash, the name of the team. For dev teams or product teams that are interdisciplinary teams, they have their own name. So for example, there's a team called Team Performance Management that makes a performance management product. And then it's just a whole bunch of crap and random stuff. Yeah.
The dog channel.
Yeah.
For example.
Yeah, we have, I think we do S dash, which S stands for social, and then a name of whatever. So there's one for dogs, there's one for cats.
But like it sounds super organized, right?
Yeah.
Like S dash dogs, you know? It's like, okay, I know.
Yeah, but we have like 2,000 Slack channels. So if you do want to find like a hobby, like typing S and then you get the list, that works pretty well. Yeah.
Nice.
I also saw something on LinkedIn from Remote. And just really curious, we saw that your people and culture team or your organization did 1,800 performance reviews in 48 hours.
Yeah.
Tell us how.
Yeah, I mean, look, so Remote built an HR software, right? And so we were really frustrated with the process. That took months with us. It took like 3 months. And I was always very surprised that I did a performance review, and then months later I heard, oh, this person got a 3, and therefore the consequences for their salary are X, Y, Z. And I'm like, I don't even remember anymore.
Yeah.
Like the world looks very different now. So when we started to build our performance product, we actually thought about like, well, it should actually improve things, not keep it. So it should be really, really fast. And so we did a few things. The first one is we made it very easy to do reviews. And so instead of doing everything all at once, we asked people to give each other feedback throughout the year regularly. And you get pinged on that. And also self-review. And so when you enter the review cycle, which does take 48 hours, actually a little bit less, you have all that information already. And AI like summarizes it. And so instead of having to like fill out, oh, what are all the things that I did? You can just use the AI answers, which has summarized the things that you've done, and you can maybe add them. And managers, when they review this or they do reviews for individuals, they have the same exact thing. And then also what really helps is tell everybody, tomorrow we're going to do performance reviews. Another thing is that we sort of aimed at, so we know the average person has maybe like 7 reports in the company, the average manager. And so a review of a single individual should not take more than 5 minutes, right? It means that you're done in 45 minutes, right?
Oh.
Under 45 minutes with a bit of margin. And so if you tell everybody, look, tomorrow is performance reviews. You all have to do it. You have to do your self-review and all of your reports. It will not take you more than an hour. People will be okay with that.
Yeah.
And so you set a really hard deadline. Then the next step is calibration. And so we just build a product that it's really easy to do calibration. So you immediately see, for example, the curve of like how our scores distributed. Then we can calibrate those really. There's like an interface for that that's really easy to use. And then, so on day 1, you do all of that. In day 2, you start with the calibrations. And then from there, you do the compensation and you're done. And that's it. And like actually the little bit of like compensation we're still building. We're releasing end of year, beginning next year or something. But then in a bit, what we'll have is that you do the whole performance review and then automatically flow out like what are the conclusions for each person's compensation, and then automatically like changes to contracts and such. So.
Yeah. Actually, very smart that you kind of collect already the feedback from the whole year, because you see so many times that the managers are like, oh yeah, but I also need an hour to think about, oh yeah, what happened in the past year, and like dig very deep. And then also sometimes it's not that constructive anymore. Because you
have massive recency bias, right? So, if somebody last week really screwed up a project, but other than that were amazing, are you going to give them like a poor rating or not? And like probably you are, right? So it's much better if you like collect this throughout the year, both the individual for themselves, like their own notes, as well as the manager. So and then you can run it more frequently as well.
Yeah, because what I like is like there's a few things I like actually, but like what I liked was the peer feedback is continuous, right? And then so if I'm understanding correctly, when it comes to doing the manager review, let's say you just pull that report. I've got the feedback. I summarized it as you mentioned. And the other thing as well is, my opinion as well with performance, is that a manager should know how the team's performing, right? If they don't, and you're just asking in a moment, tell me, and they should just be able to tell you off the top of their head. Like, especially, I don't know if you use like a 3-point scale, 4-point scale.
Yeah, we do.
Scale.
Yeah, we have like a standard 5-point scale. Yeah, so 3 is like meeting expectations, 4 is sometimes exceeds, 5 is often exceeds, in the other direction.
Yeah, exactly. So pretty much you're probably using 2, 3, 4 mostly, right? Because 1 and 5 are the outliers. So like, you should be able to tell me where someone is in your team so you can make it happen. Another thing that I like, you said you kept referring to it as your performance product, which I like. So because we've been talking a lot about people experience as a product and building products. So I like how you've applied the product lens to people processes.
Yeah, well, it's because we actually had to build it. So it actually is a product. And it's really satisfying to... So we used to have this documented remote, handbook. For this word, our handbook is partially public, but not all of it. So you can go to remote.com/handbook, and there's our handbook, but this part is probably not public. I don't know. And we had a page on like ideal customer profile for remote, and like that's used by everybody to inform decisions around what are we building, is this interesting? And it used to be really long and complicated, and now it just says remote is our ideal customer profile. So like our first customer is our own team, and so Barbara, our chief people officer, she's our most important customer, and so. That informs a lot about what we're doing and how we go about making particular decisions. And it makes everything much easier and really fun, because then we get to use it actively, immediately, but we also get really valuable feedback really quickly. And we have this channel on Slack called Dog Feeding Feedback, which is like you try your own dog food. And then like the amount of feedback that comes in there, because the whole company knows it, it's just overwhelming. Like it's an incredible amount of feedback. And what is the feedback? It's about everything, like from little things like, oh, I don't get any feedback when I click on this button, or I don't like this animation, or this color is bad. But that's actually super useful, because that's the kind of feedback that usually is not shared through customers, because they're like, well, my main piece of feedback is that it's too expensive, Like, if you would reduce the price, I would be much happier. But in reality, like creating a great product requires a lot of feedback and a lot of back and forth, and like this, it's really nice to build something for yourself.
Cool.
Yeah.
How is like the rest of the people and culture team set up in remote?
So we have a talent acquisition organization, and then we have a compensation organization under Barbara, and then we have what do we call it? People partners. So these are liaisons from the people team in different parts of the organization.
And do you know what is the role that they play in the organization? Like the
people partners?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, the people they work very closely together with teams, managers, executives, depending on which level they're operating, to help them with all people-related things. And it could be anything, right? From helping them, somebody is performing extremely well and I want to create a better career path for them. How do you go about it? What are the processes at remote? What support can I provide? To the opposite, when somebody is not performing and there's problems, or there's random other things. It's really good to have a person you can just talk to, like very freely, instead of like going to HR.
Yes.
Like you just have a person you talk to. That's really nice. Yeah, I'm of course in a weird position because my people partner is just Barbara. I go with the Barbara, and then she's like, "Oh no, you have to talk with this person, or I'll bring in this person." But yeah, that works really well. Yeah,
nice. And just wondering, because I was reading like some interesting stats, and like Microsoft posted in 2023, it is already a bit outdated, but that 78% of the employees are more, they say that they're more productive remotely.
Yeah.
but 85% of the managers don't believe them.
Yeah.
And currently in the past year, we kind of see a trend that all kind of bigger organizations are pulling back people to the office. What do you think? Like, do you have any idea why this is in the first place?
Yeah, I mean, I think all sorts of reasons, right? Like first, these companies, they have massive leases on offices, and the executives probably are, they are more close to their work. They probably spend a lot of time there. See those empty offices. Yeah, I understand that feels weird.
Yeah.
There's also, these organizations that grew up in offices are not necessarily great at remote work. And so for them, it's really easy to make the case to say, well, actually, we are less effective outside of the office and working remotely. And it's much easier to communicate within the office. And especially if you're a manager, it feels better if you see people doing the work, right? And a lot of companies are just not very good at managing performance and managing work. They don't manage on output. They manage on presence. They manage on activity rather than actual output. And if you do that, then again, like being in the office is a form of activity rather than output. And so I think there's a lot of reasons why these companies doing it, and I really understand it. It's also easier, right? Like in the office, you don't have to think about anything. We've been doing that for more than 100 years. So you walk into the office, you know exactly what is expected of you. You know how things work. There's meeting rooms. You don't have to do the effort of thinking about how work works.
No.
And then there's of course a huge factor of trust, because if you work remotely, yes, you should manage on output, but you should also give a lot of trust to people that they manage their own work and that they actually work the time that they're supposed to work. It's hard to. You don't want to measure it. I don't want to measure it, but I can totally imagine that these companies still feel like even if we manage it, even if we measure how much time people are active, I still don't trust them. So I think there's a lot of reasons for it, and I understand. I wouldn't do the same, obviously, but yeah.
But I think indeed measuring output is something that a lot of companies struggle really, really hard with still.
Yeah.
Right? So
it's very difficult, right? I think it's very difficult. I think there's very few like salespeople is this really complex thing. You should never think that sales is simple. They work really hard, these people, but it's so clear. Because what is their output is how much dollars, euros of sales they have done. It's great. So for salespeople, it's really, really easy. But for engineering, it is not easy at all. Because a really great engineer might spend a week to then delete one line of code, and it might be the most important thing they've done in their entire career, right? To solve the huge problem. I was reading about antenna gate with Apple, and they solved that with, I think it was 4 bits of data were changed. So like really, really small things can have really big impact. And so how do you measure output there? It's really, really difficult. And so as a company and as a manager of engineers, especially if an inexperienced one, it might be really difficult to get an idea of like what is output. Or same with like somebody working in a people team.
Yeah.
How do you measure output? Now, the reality is that it is a qualitative effort, right? And so as a manager, you should just regularly check in with the people that you work with. You should have clear expectations, and those expectations should be met. And then there's a bit of a gap, and that gap is crossed with trust.
Yeah.
Right? And so if you don't trust your people, then that gap will feel infinitely large. And then what is the solution? Well, you will go to the office because I don't have to trust you because I see that your butt is in the seat, so you probably are working.
Yeah.
And then I can peek at your monitor to see if you're not, playing games. So, it is difficult to measure output, and I actually think it's not a true solvable problem. There's a part about, are you having an impact on a company? Maybe are you doing what we agreed you would do, and is the feedback from the people around you good? That's probably the best you can do.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I also think with this one, and I also kind of links to the performance review topic, right? Like, 100% with the sales team, it's easy to measure the output. Same with recruiters as well, right? Because you see in people starting in the organization, but people like the people partners and engineers, for example, is way more difficult to measure. But that means we just have to actually trust their managers to make a judgment. And this is what I say as a people partner myself, say to managers a lot, like, you're actually paid to make those qualitative judgments.
Yeah.
And it's okay. And they're like, oh, well, what are the OKRs and the numbers and the metrics I'm going to measure their performance? Sometimes you can't. Yeah. And I'm just going to trust you to make the good judgment.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Is it time for a little intermezzo?
Yes.
Okay.
Cool. So, gun to your head, Job.
Yes.
If tomorrow you had to go back to a fully in-office company, what is the one thing from remote work you fight hardest to keep?
Few meetings.
Yes?
Yeah. I don't want to sit in a meeting room.
No?
I actually don't mind working from an office. Like, I'm not against an office at all. What I always say is like, I would love to have an office as long as it's right next to my house and everybody just goes there and appears magically on time. I don't want to commute.
No.
Having an office can serve a lot of purposes. I would get a whole new room in my house. Be great. Yeah. No, it's nothing against an office, and it makes things easier. It's just there's so many upsides of working remotely.
Yeah, but okay, less meetings. Then I also wanted to ask something, but that we always end with in the podcast, a practical tip for the listeners.
Yeah.
So, for example, let's say I just started a small company. I have people all over the globe working remote. What is like a small thing any leader can do literally starting tomorrow to make their remote team feel more connected?
Yeah, when I say don't do meetings, do meetings when you feel like it. So when you feel like you're not well connected with people, or you feel like, I feel alone, it's a really good reason to actually have a meeting, or to do something like have an open audio channel or even an audio video where people join while they are working. So I can chat a little bit while they're working. I think that's a really, really easy one to do.
That is a nice one.
I think if you're a really small team, being extremely distributed is very difficult. And that you could sort of create an unsolvable situation because you are going to have very few people on certain time zones. And that's really difficult. So I would always encourage teams to expand across the globe with the size of their team. So don't have more than like a 3-hour time zone with the next closest person. Overlap. So meaning that if I'm in the Netherlands, I should only hire within +3- hours of time zone, because otherwise we're going to have very few overlapping hours and it will feel really lonely otherwise. And then organize teams around time zones as well. So don't have a team working on a product and one person is in Europe, one person in the US, and one person is Japan, because we have one team at Remote that works like that because they're exceptionally good at working asynchronously, but it typically doesn't work.
No.
Yeah, and I think because if we think about like the globe, right, there's like America's, EMEA, and like Africa. It might work if we're in two of those. So if we're in Europe and the US, it's going to work. Or if we're in Europe and Japan, in APAC, for example, or APAC and US, that will work.
Yeah, any combination of two works, but the three together doesn't work. Yeah, that's roughly correct. Yeah. And in general, you also have to like align it, because some teams have to work really closely together. Some teams much less than that. And the way a team works is sort of how you should compose it as well. But if the concern is like my team is not bonding enough, and the trick is spending more time together. And a really good way to spend more time together is to come together in person.
Yeah.
We don't do it with the whole company at the same time. We do it with teams or sometimes departments because they have something to discuss. They have some work to do together. But then it's also a great opportunity to go out for lunch and dinner and such.
Cool.
Oh, so you do like encourage the meetups where possible, like maybe once a year or something like this, or
it depends. We do them for a function, and then if people want to meet up themselves, we do actually fund some of it. So we provide some money for if you want to meet up just for having dinner together and whatnot. But if there's like a reason to get together as a team, we do that. Yeah, and we do it more and more and more because we see that there's just advantages. Sometimes you just need to spend 2 days in a meeting room together to do something really difficult. Yeah. And that's a really great occasion to then go out for a nice dinner, and that's a great time too.
And that's and I always say this a lot as well. Like for example, now me and you have met in person once. When we have video calls, we already have the rapport from when we've met. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that works. One question, and maybe some of it might be confidential, but because you're talking about your Ben's team earlier, your compensation team.
Yeah.
And one challenge we see a lot with remote companies and distributed companies is, what's our comp strategy, right? Are we going to pay everyone San Francisco salaries, for example? Or are we going to pay everyone in Europe the same and everyone in the Americas the same? Do we want to differentiate between Netherlands and Portugal, for example? So how do you approach that?
Yeah, labor is a market. So you have to play the market. So you always pay market rates. And it means that you end up playing different for people in different locations. There's no good alternative to it at scale, right? When you're a small company, you can pay everybody the same. It will break. I've seen it so many times. It will break at some point. And it breaks for all sorts of complex reasons that are really hard to argue out. Like if you pay everybody San Francisco rate, which San Francisco rate? They're going to pay top of market because the latest I hear that is $3.5 billion. And so that's not a scalable solution. And so you treat it either you say, we have a fixed salary, but it's not top of the market, and even that's going to break. So it really depends what you are trying to optimize for a company. We say we want to hire great people, and we want to build a sustainable company. So we cannot pay the same as OpenAI pays people. But we can pay pretty well in most markets. And then in those markets, we figure out, what is the range. And of course, we build a tool for this in remote, so you can see what people are paid for. But yeah, that's the only thing that works. Yeah, there's no alternative. And I think people have to get off of the idea, individuals, like if you feel worried about this, if you're an employee, you're like, oh, but my work is worth the same thing. You as a person are worth the same, but your labor is actually marketed to your local market. And if we create more international companies, if my company does a better job and we encourage more companies to hire internationally, rates, so salaries will level out. So in very low salary areas, those will go up. And we have seen this in our data. In high, they will not really go down. So it's just that you're competing with everybody across the world. Yeah, that's it. There's nothing else that works.
Yeah, so it's pretty much you say, okay, we're going to be for example, like top quartile payer.
Yeah,
in all the markets we're at. So whether that might look different in Portugal, Netherlands, and Spain. Yeah. But like in theory, you should be well paid in the country you're in, which means everyone in the company will have a similar standard of living.
Yeah, I would never say that either about standard of living, because it's really hard to index that. So, and the market should guide the salaries in that direction anyway. Yeah. You could say, well, we have a minimum pay, so we pay everybody above a certain rate. That's one way to think about it. As a company at scale, it's just really hard to keep defending policies that are like economically not efficient, but also doesn't improve performance. So, for example, if I am going to pay a lot of money to everybody and be very, very far above market in certain regions, that also creates, inverse effects, or effects that you don't want to have, where you are hiring people that are just joining your company only for the money and nothing else, and they stay in a job because they have golden handcuffs, even they don't. Which is, as an individual, you're like, no, but I would love to have more money. Yeah, everybody. And like, yes, you would really work harder, but like as a company, you have to take this like high level view and think about the fact that there are going to be people in your company that are deeply unhappy and really only there for the money. And it will fight tooth and nail to keep to hold on to that, which is not really what you want. Actually, unhappy people should find something that makes them more happy. Yeah. They will do better. Yeah. And you want people to join not just for the money. Yes, I understand. Most people in my company as well, and every other company, are there because they need to earn money and they want to earn good money. But they should also be there for the mission and believe a little bit in what the company is trying to achieve. So, I don't think something else would work at scale. When you're a small company, you can do whatever you want. Then it totally works. Yeah, to have everybody the same salary.
And how do you then do that with benefits, for example? Because do you globally have all the same benefits for everybody, or is that also different?
Yeah, it's funny because when I started remote, my vision was that we would do that. Yeah, it's impossible.
Yeah,
benefits are extremely different country by country. So. In the US, of course, healthcare is super, super important. Yeah. Whereas here in the Netherlands,
No, but I think what you said there, it's also what's important in each country is different. And also the people value things very differently. For example, in US, healthcare would be super important, but do they want more leave? A little bit more is great.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So what we did is we say, well, certain things like PTO, we have a global policy, but then if your country does better, good for you. You just get more time off, right? But for people in the US where minimum leave is nothing, it's you get to think about your parents once in a while. We have a really generous policy. But for other things like healthcare, like other kinds of benefits, we just have a package per country and we index it per country. And again, because this is a core thing we do and we offer to our customers as well, it's very doable. And what we have done for our customers and then we follow ourselves is that we basically created 3 packages per country. So it's basic, good, very good, and then depending on the country, you might choose one or the other.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us. It was really interesting to hear how you built this successful remote company. And for the listeners, remember, irresistible organizations aren't built by accident. Whenever your team sits together or across continents, connection is something you can design. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast episode. And personally, thank you for sponsoring this one. Bye.